So after hearing Matt talk, I kind of feel like you already had your sermon, right? Man, I love hearing him. I'm glad he's back. Thanks, Matt, for coming back. Woo! There you are. Angie and I, when we were young and living in Indianapolis, I decided against her wishes that I'd go back into the ministry, and so that meant against her wishes. She never signed up to be a preacher's wife. Come on. She is so fortunate to have you as a church, though, because you treat her so well. I hear stories of preachers' wives, the way churches treat them. You guys are awesome. So I worked at St. Vincent's Hospital going through graduate school. And I worked there for a reason, because the schedule would work out and I could get full-time benefits, and it really worked well. There was a drawback, though. There was a problem. You see, in St. Vincent's and medical records at that time, they were split between floors. And the top floor was where I worked, and the bottom floor I had to go down to sometimes, so you'd have to go through the public hallways, public elevator down. Now, that's not a very big deal, right? Except we're in a hospital. Now, let me explain why this is a big deal. When I was in high school, and I still see some of it today, but man, it was crazy when I was a teenager. The way you greeted somebody when you saw them was you said, "How are you?" And that wasn't a question. You didn't answer that question. "How are you?" "Hey, how are you?" That's how you greeted one another. And if you answered, it's like, why are you answering that? That's not a question, it's a greeting. And you still see it. It's kind of like the East Coast, "What's up?" right? So I did that. That's the way I was. Everybody I saw, I can't help but greet them. And so, "Hey, how are you?" as I pass them in the hallway, except I'm in a hospital. And people in hospitals have problems. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but as people get older, they like to talk about their problems. Have you noticed that? And so, "How are you?" "I have this boil on my foot, and it's pussy and white." I'm like, "Ooh, I didn't want to know that." The worst was when I was in an elevator. You know, of course, I'm only going down one floor, but they're always slow when you want to get out of there, right? And the door's closing. "Hey, how are you?" And he turns to me, and even his best Eeyore voice, because that's probably all he had. "The doctor says it's the worst case of hemorrhoids I've ever seen." What do you say after that? I wanted to smile because it was so awkward, but that wouldn't be appropriate. So I said, "Okay, well, I'll pray for your," and I stopped. You know, once you take off, you got to land it. Where are you going to land that one? If I was quick on my feet, I would have said, "For your body, for your health." But I couldn't think of, I guess I could have, pretended I was a doctor and said, "I'll pray for your posterior." Or maybe your derriere. Or possibly your gluteus maximus. This would have been acceptable for hospitals, but no, I didn't know what to say. So, since that time, I have changed what I mean by "how are you?" because life kind of hits hard, doesn't it? The realities of life, as you journey through this thing, it's tough. And so I kind of changed what I meant by that, because now I really want to know. Now, sometimes I mess up. Somebody will say, "How are you?" and they probably mean it, and I just go on with my conversation like, "Oh, that was just a greeting." But now I want to know, "How are you?" And what I find is people actually do answer it, but they answer it with one word. And you know what that word is, right? "How are you?" How do they answer it? Fine. When they're not fine. And when I'm not fine, I'll answer fine. And you know what? We need to get in the habit of starting to ask, "How are you really?" because I want to know. I want to know what's going on, because if we were honest and transparent and open, we'd probably share something more than fine. We'd probably share, "I'm tired." If you really want to know, I'm in pain. I am confused. I have issues that I don't even know how to describe. I'm struggling. I feel unloved. I feel unwelcomed. I feel like my family doesn't care. I feel down. I'm sad. We need a bigger vocabulary, don't we? Because there's a lot of that going on. We do have stuff that we need to deal with, and we need to share it, because it's not going to heal just being kept inside. Can you imagine if you went up to somebody and you said, "How are you?" and they just looked at you in the eye and says, "I'm actually struggling with temptation right now." I think that'd be harder to talk about than someone's bum, wouldn't it? And yet it's real, because that's what they're going through. I'm having trouble relating to my child. It's real. So, some of us experience more than one thing. And the reason why we say fine is because we don't want to open up that can of worms. We don't want to spill what really is going on because we feel there's more than just one thing hitting us. Maybe some of the things I said, you're like, yes, 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 yes. I didn't know this was a checkoff sheet. All of those things are hitting me. I'm being like bombarded. And if that's you, if you're like one after another, things are just flying your way, things are just hitting you hard, there's another word for you that you could say. Maybe you've never thought of this word, but this is a word you can say. Because maybe it's where you're at. How are you? Honestly, I feel defeated. I feel absolutely defeated. I can't win. I know that's a crazy word, but maybe that's where you're at. And if you're there, you're not alone. I have felt that way. I understand that. Defeated, though, means that there must be attacks, right? And that's kind of weird because everything that comes at us seems to be from different sources, so how can we actually be under attack? But that's the way it feels, doesn't it? I mean, the kids are demanding and the spouse doesn't understand and the teacher blows up extra homework, the doctor restricts your diet and your schedule won't let you rest and the house is a mess because the kids won't pick up and baby's crying. I mean, you just got all this stuff coming at you, plus temptations, plus personal inadequacy issues. You got all this stuff and it just keeps hitting you and hitting you and hitting, but you can explain it all away and they're all from different sources and yet you feel attacked and defeated, right? I think we've all been there. And we need to understand, maybe, that there's something else going on. Possibly. We need to open our eyes to the possibility that maybe it is coordinated in some way.
Will you go, I'll go. Will you stay, I'll stay. Sing it!
Order, like somebody has actually strategically planned this, mapped this thing out. Now, I'm not talking about like some impersonal force in the universe like that karma idea where there's this balance of energy, negative and positive, that has to happen. I'm talking about something personal, something that is spookier than that. Something that the Bible even talks about. See, it's something that we need to talk about once in a while because the Bible talks about it. That there is some reality out there that is just as real as the reality we experience, and it is a spiritual reality. And I know we don't want to talk about it because, it's weird. It's like me trying to run out of that elevator as fast as I can. I'm just in medical records. I don't even like blood. But we got to talk about it. How are you? Well, I feel like I'm actually under spiritual attack. Ooh, what are you going to do with that conversation? Don't you dare walk away from that. It may be the most important conversation you have with that person. Because we're told that is a reality. Here's what Paul says. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but we feel like it is. We feel like everything that hits us is something that we can explain away in the physical realm. That's all he means by flesh and blood, the physical realm. But against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. And by heavenly realms, he does not mean where God sits on his throne. He means the spiritual realm that is just as real as the physical realm. In fact, they intersect and they're connected in some way because of the way that they're described throughout different contributors to the Bible. So there's something going on here. Something going on here. And I know we would rather just run away from it, but we need to ask, how are you doing? And is it something of the spiritual nature that you're struggling with? Because that kind of attack we need to understand better. Now, here's what it looks like for us usually in our heads, when we think of spiritual attack, see if I'm right, you think of the cartoon of angel on one shoulder and demon on the other, right? That's kind of like the spiritual attack put in cartoon form. Here's one of my favorite cartoons with that in it. Anybody here an Emperor's New Groove fan? Yeah, Kronk, he's the best. So he's got a little angel that looks like him and a little demon that looks like him, because he's just screwed up in the head. And they're both influencing him. And isn't that the way we kind of see this spiritual thing, that one hits and the other hits, and you got to make a decision. Should I not? Yes, no, maybe. It looks like this if we diagrammed it. You have this on in your bulletin if you want to draw pretty pictures, because that's what you do. You, right there, are in the middle, and you've got arrows coming on either side, and those arrows represent God from one direction and Satan from the other direction, God and his angels, Satan and his demons. That's how we would diagram this spiritual warfare thing, and we need to actually clarify this isn't how the Bible describes it at all. This is not the right picture. And we need to get the picture right so we can understand what's really going on and take this seriously. So let's look at the right diagram. You would be down here. It's the second picture in the back of your bulletin where you got all those arrows coming in, and those arrows none of those arrows represent God. All of those arrows represent things of life that are hitting at you. And sometimes life just hits hard. Sometimes it's coordinated, influenced by the evil one, but they're all hitting you. And you might be thinking, well, as I look at that, I see all those arrows, that's fine. So those are all the different life circumstances that are hitting me, but where's God in my diagram? Because God better be there. He is. But if you remember, if you are in Christ, He is in you. That means that you right here have Christ in you, and that's a good thing, because greater is He who is in you than he who is in the world. And we're told in Corinthians that He is faithful and just. He will not allow us to be tempted beyond what we can bear, but when we are tempted, He'll allow a way for us to stand up under it, so when the attacks come and start hitting us, we have God on our side, and He's strong. Right? That's good news. And yet He doesn't promise that He's going to take us out of those attacks. He just promises that He'll be strong enough that you'll be strong enough by Him in those attacks. Here's why we don't think of this as spiritual warfare, because all those things that start hitting at you, you can explain away. Right? Let's just throw some up, and you could throw some different ones here, but busyness, man, that hits us a lot. Busyness actually may be influenced by the evil one just to get you to stop reading your Bible. Right? Or maybe this one, frustration. Man, you get frustrated with someone, you start to get a little angry at them. Maybe there's an unforgiving spirit that starts. Where'd all that start? Well, could it be stirred up by the enemy? Temptation comes your way, and it's just a little thing, and yet it's something that the enemy throws at us. Or it's half-truths that get passed on about you to someone else, and it's a good friend who betrayed you by sharing that, and those hurt like crazy. There's nothing probably hurts more. Or maybe it's a misunderstanding. He whispers in the boss's ear that the email that you sent gets all jumbled up, and he misunderstands it and calls you in and reprimands you. And you could, if you look at all of those things, explain them all away, and coming from different sources, it doesn't look at all like it's coming from one source. It doesn't look as simple as Satan on one shoulder telling you, hey, why don't you do this? It looks more like life, right? And I would imagine that the enemy is completely fine with you treating all of these attacks as just things you can explain away. In fact, Paul tells us that Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. He'd be fine with you misunderstanding him if he's going to go around in a mask. He'd be fine with you misunderstanding. It's not a clown mask. It's a angel of light. It's something that's good. It's something that's acceptable. It's something that's common. It's something that maybe you would even take in as good. He doesn't mind that at all, because his goal isn't to get you to follow him. His goal is to get you destroyed, to get you to stop, to get you discouraged, to get you defeated. That's his goal. And so, as we go through this year of Move, and we're talking about how to live the life Jesus shared, because he wants us not to just believe certain things, he wants us to actually move on them, act on them, live them out. We have a lot of momentum going in our church, don't we? Which is really cool, because we have a new youth minister right here. Wave your hand. Give us the peace sign. Okay, there we go. And we have a building that we're going to write on in just a little bit. We're going to put scriptures on the ground of that building. There's a lot of momentum. We have elders and deacons who are turning in forms. I've gotten a few already, and so we've started the process of raising up new leaders in the church and servants in the church, and there's a lot of momentum. But the problem is we need to be spiritually moving as well, and the enemy wants to stop all of this, and especially when things are going well, it seems that's when you get attacked. I mean, life just comes at us all the time. Life doesn't stop. But when things are going well, in your walk with God and going well with your church and going well with your family, that's when you become a target. And so we have to be aware of that because we don't want to get stuck here. We want to spiritually move too. So we have to understand, what are we up against? What is this thing that is haunting us or hunting us or chasing us or after us, if this is truly what spiritual warfare looks like? Listen. If you went out on a picnic with your honey and you spread out your blanket and you got all the food there and it's a beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky and the trees and the bush, everything looks great, and you're having a good time, and all of a sudden you notice that you're starting to get wet. Your shirt, first of all, gets wet, and then the ground around you, the blanket we're on, it's soaked. What's going on? Now my sandwich too, now it's soaked. What's going on? At some point, there's not a cloud in the sky. At some point, you probably ought to get up from where you're at and look over the hedges and see if there's some mischievous kids throwing water balloons at you. Right? I mean, if there are all these things that just seem way too coincidental, I mean, I don't sweat that much, do I? You didn't pee, did you? We got to think there's maybe something more going on. And the things that are messing with us are far more dangerous than water balloons. So, where we left off in Mark, Jesus was on a boat. You remember, he was asleep because he'd taught all day, and the disciples are in the middle of this lake, but a storm comes up, a furious squall, and it just starts rocking the boat, and the winds beat against it, and they're panicking like they're going to die. Wake up, Jesus. And Jesus stands up in the midst of the roaring winds and waves, and he roars louder and stops it all. And they're just terrified because they realize one greater than nature is in their boat. And yet, that's exactly where they want to be, in the very fear of God rather than fearing anything else. Because when God's roar is louder than the roars of the world, you're on the side of victory. That's really cool. And so that's the setup for this spiritual battle that we're about to see. So Jesus arrives on the other side of the lake. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes, and that's just a 2-hour boat ride, except there's this storm in the middle, so it probably was longer. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet. Isn't that nice? He came down. He probably was bringing cookies to greet Jesus. Come on, Jesus, welcome to my home. No, he's got an evil spirit. Something's messed up in him. This man lived in the tombs because nobody wanted him. He's an outcast. And no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons of his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. So they tried to get him, but he breaks through, and it just shows the power of spiritual forces, right? Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. This guy is messed up, isn't he? Something is wrong with him. And we're told right up front, hey, this is a spiritual thing. This is a demonic thing. Something in him is influencing and controlling will and emotions and his mind. And he's just messed up. We get that. So then we get to verse 6, and we're told by Mark something very strange. We're told what he already told us. He already told us the man came down to meet Jesus. Remember? He was bringing cookies. Not really, but remember? When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. So this is the second time he tells us the very same thing. In Jewish writing and speaking, they would repeat themselves when something was important. Let me say that again. In Jewish speaking and writing, they would repeat themselves when something is important, right? And so here he is saying something that we better take note of. This is going to be meaningful to us in some way. The reaction this man has when he sees Jesus. We'll come back to it. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" He knows who Jesus is. He knows the full identity of Jesus Christ. "Swear to God that you won't torture me." He not only knows him, but he knows his power. I mean, the disciples knew his power. He stood up and roared louder than the winds and the waves. Now the demons know his power, that Jesus could do far worse to them, so they're scared. Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." This is the first time we're told that there's more than one demon inside him. Now imagine if Hollywood were recreating this scene, they would have this voice where he answers the question sound like rushing waters of many multitudes multitudes of voices. We are legion. You know, you'd hear all the voices in there and it'd be eerie, for we are many. And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. We keep hearing that he's begging Jesus, begging Jesus. He knows Jesus could destroy him. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside, which is interesting. It means that this Gerasene area is far away from Jewish territory because Jews don't herd pigs. They don't eat them, they don't herd them. So we are outside of a Jewish territory. The demons begged Jesus, send us among the pigs. Isn't that odd? Allow us to go into them. They want to leave the man because Jesus is there, and they know that he's threatening to throw them into an even worse place, into the abyss, or what we know as hell, and we need to make sure we understand. Hell is not a fun place for demons to have fun torturing us. It was actually created for the devil and his demons. It is a place of ultimate torment, and they don't want to go there. They see Jesus. They know their days are numbered. They know that's their destiny. The only reason that people even go to hell, it was not created for people. The only reason people go to hell is because they don't accept the gift of God. God's desire is that everybody trusts in Jesus Christ and gets to not go there, but to be with him. So they're begging him, and they keep begging him, send us anywhere. And so they asked to go into the pigs. That's where they want to go, into the pigs. And he gave them permission. I think that's even weirder. Jesus, go ahead, go into the pigs. And the evil spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000, which tells us that the demons inside this man were at least 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. This always kind of gets us. Why? Why did the demons want to go into the pigs if they were going to drown? What's the point of that? Did they know they were going to be drowned? Did they know it would drive them so nuts they would die? And why did Jesus allow it? Jesus says, yeah, go into the pigs. Did Jesus know that they were going to drown? Did he have the foresight? Did he see that they were? Why? Isn't that weird? It's strange unless Jesus actually wants us to see this. If he knew it was going to happen, then he wants us to see it, right? He wants us somehow to see what these demons are up to and what they're all about and what their ultimate game is as they play it out. And if that's true, then it's very, very possible that the demons themselves know exactly what they're doing, and it's not a mistake. Oops, man, we didn't calculate that right. We should have asked for something else other than pigs. They're so dumb. No, I think it was calculated. I think it was exactly what they wanted to happen. You see, the demons themselves and Satan himself are fully aware of what their condition is and what their destiny is. The reason why they're terrified when they see Jesus is because they know what he represents. He is God's presence on earth, and God has come to judge. And they know that their end is in hell, where there's torment forever and ever, and they're begging for anything other than that. But the reason they want to go into the pigs, it just reveals what their attitude is towards God. You see, a lot of times we think, oh yeah, Satan and demon, they're just looking out to have some fun with us. They're looking to really just mess with us. They just want to get into our lives and enjoy making it miserable. I don't think there's any enjoyment in them at all. So you see, enjoyment and pleasure and joy, that's all from God. It gets distorted, but it's from God. They don't have that. What they have is anger. What they have is jealousy. What they have is fury. They are furious at God, and they will do anything to destroy his creation. They are after anything that represents what God created when he said at the beginning it was good. He's going after that. He's going to destroy that. He's going to wipe that out, and he wants to destroy the prizes of his creation, you and me. But when Jesus said, you can't stay in that man anymore, they said, well, then we want to destroy something. And they get into the pigs and have their way with them. And Jesus allows it, not because he's not compassionate for animals. He just happens to be more compassionate towards us. And he wants us to see what we're up against. That we're not to be playing around with this thing. That we're not to allow the things that he throws at us to stay in us. Whether it be just that discouraging heart, or whether it be that self-focus, or whether it be that temptation, or whether it be that anger or that unforgiving spirit. He doesn't want us to have those things, because those are not just footholds. They're the beginning steps of the strategic plan of our enemy to get into us, to do more harm than what we realize they're there for. Sometimes we think it's just the kid, the goofy kid in class who says, made you look, no, it's a lot more than that. Not the guy that trips you and then laughs at you. No, that's not Satan's demons. It's far worse. It's not wet willy time for these guys. This is serious stuff. He's after taking us down, taking down our families, destroying our marriages, ruining our careers, ruining our health. His ultimate goal is ultimate destruction, and Jesus wants us to see that as the pigs get completely annihilated in the river, in the lake. This is serious stuff. It's not to be messed with. And yet so often we just excuse it all as things that can be explained, that can be explained, it's just a coincidence. It might be. I'm not saying that Satan actually is the one who throws stuff at you. I'm only saying that he influences those who throw stuff at you. And sometimes life just happens. But at some point, you got to ask yourself, I'm trying to do the right thing and I'm trying to live for God. That makes me a target. And these things seem to be awfully coordinated. And I'm trying really hard to do the right thing. I'm trying really hard to live the right way. And these things seem to keep coming. And I know that I want to keep serving Jesus, but this is getting hard. At some point, maybe when somebody asks you, how are you? You need to answer and just tell them, I don't know, but this seems like maybe the enemy is having his way with me and I could sure use some prayer. That's transparent. That's real. So what do we do? How do we get out of this? Obviously prayer. But I want to share what the man did. Remember the man? I want you to be the man for a minute. For some of us, it's easier to do than others because, he's all cut up and living among the tombs. And some of us just feel that way, don't we? We've been through a lot. We're messed up. I want you to imagine you're the man living among the tombs. What did he try? Well, they tried to bind him, didn't they? And that didn't work because it's a physical thing, and we're dealing with spiritual things. Sometimes we think that we can, by our own will, make it through this. Somehow, if I just try harder, I'm gonna get past these attacks. Let me ask you a question. If Adam and Eve, who before the fall had a perfect will, were not strong enough to withstand the attacks of the demon, how about you and I who struggle with this sin nature that is now in our flesh because of the fall? You think we're going to do any better than them? No. It's not by strength. It's not by our own might. We're not going to be able to make it by just sheer willpower, especially as marred as it is now. We're going to need something more. Isolation wasn't the answer. Sending them off to the caves, that's the worst thing you could possibly do to anybody who is under attack, because what we think is, well, I'm weird, nobody has problems like this. We don't answer the question with an honest answer. We just say, I'm fine. And in that isolation and in that loneliness, it just grows, and it grows worse, and it grows stronger. Remember when Jesus said to Cain, sin is knocking at your door, it's trying to get in, its desires to have you, you must not let it in. It's scratching at your door. Don't let it in, Cain. Its desires to completely destroy you. What did he do? Well, remember earlier when I said when they repeat things, it's really, really important? Do you remember earlier when I said when I repeat things, it's really, really important? So Mark repeats himself. Here's what he says. First time it's verse 2. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an evil spirit came down from the tombs to meet him. Here's verse 6. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell down on his knees in front of him. I think sometimes when we read passages like this and we hear him call out, my name is Legion, because there's so many of us in him, we think that this man is completely overrun and has no ability to make any choices on his own. But that's not true with spiritual warfare. With spiritual warfare, the enemy influences and messes with our minds, messes with our emotions, but we still have volition enough to do at least one thing. What he did. He ran to Jesus. Now, you might think, well, no. Maybe it's the demons. They really want to be tormented by Jesus. That's why they ran to Jesus. No, the demons would run away from Jesus, wouldn't they? They know from a distance, there's Jesus on the shore. We got this man. Our desire is to destroy him. The only reason we haven't yet destroyed him is because he has enough volition to try. And it's only a matter of time before he's going to be utterly destroyed. I believe when he picks up stones and starts cutting himself, he's trying to cut out of his flesh the demons that are in him, and he can't get them out. I believe he's trying everything he can, and when he sees Jesus and feels inside the fear of the demons, when he sees Jesus, more fear than the disciples probably who are on the boat who say, who is this guy who can control nature? He realizes his only hope is on the shore, and while he can't speak right, he runs and throws himself at Jesus. He doesn't just run, but he falls down on his knees in front of him. He can't say to Jesus, I am so messed up, I need help. In fact, Jesus never even asks him, how are you doing today, really? He's naked. He's cut up. He's got a bad hair day. He's not doing well. Jesus knows that, has complete compassion on him, heals him completely, restores him, clothes him. He's in his right mind the next scene when we see him. Absolutely amazing. Jesus knew his condition and healed him, but he ran and humbled himself and fell before Jesus. So what do we need to do? We got to run to Jesus. We got to realize that the things that we've allowed in our life are things that need to be repented of, turned away from, given up, and we need to run to Jesus. We need to turn our backs and run to Jesus. That's what repentance is, right? Turning away from and turning towards. But if we don't turn towards, we haven't completed it. The reason he falls down on his knees is because he gets it. The end of repentance always is worship. We always have to come to Jesus and fall down on our knees before him, submitting ourselves to him. This is what it looks like to turn away from the things that, and you got to identify them, and some of them are so big you got to share with others so that they could pray for you and share with God. Obviously, you got to repent, but you've got to run to Jesus and you've got to worship him. Because without worship, you'll end up worshiping something because we're made to worship. We are. We're absolutely made to worship. And that's the reason why it's so easy for us to worship people and worship stuff and worship self. And when those things start to become our objects of worship, when those things start to become our objects of worship, it only invites pain into our life. And you know, Jeff, that's crazy. Why would anybody worship something that is painful? It happens all the time because the things we worship we're setting up as God. And everything that we set up, whether it's other people, stuff, or self, whatever we set up as God will disappoint us. And it hurts like crazy because we're seeking something we can never achieve because it's not God. We've got to worship him again. And when we put him in the rightful place, he never disappoints. He never fails. He is always good. So we run to him and we fall on our knees before him and we worship. And that's why it's so important. I say it all the time, that you are in the rhythm that God created by the creation order where the Sabbath comes every 7 days. That Sabbath is a gift to you from God so that you can stop working. Why? So you can go to ball games and have some fun? No, so you can rest at the feet of Jesus in worship. And I know you hear me say that a lot, but listen, the enemy will get back into your life, weasel into it quicker than a week. You need that rhythm. You need it to be worship truly, because sometimes we can come in here and not worship, right? Our minds are so distracted. I know this better than anybody because I have a million things on my mind. I know that's an exaggeration, but I have 900,000 things on my mind. And those things are always on my mind, and I have to keep focusing back on Jesus, keep focusing. And I know you do too, because you came with kids, some of you. You got a lot on your mind if you came with kids, but somehow you got to find moments to truly worship in the corporate setting because that's how he's designed it, where we just pour our hearts out. Then you've got to take that into your week and continue to worship at the feet of Jesus. That's what this man did. And that's what we need to do. So let's do that. Let's do that. Let's take a moment to just worship. I'm going to ask that you bow your heads, close your eyes. I'm going to ask you a question. How are you really? What attacks are coming upon your life right now? What is it that has distracted you or has a foothold in your life or is controlling you? In your mind, God has given you a great creative mind. In your mind, will you see yourself standing among the tombs? Look around at the mess, these small things maybe, but choices have created. Name those destructive things. And then turn your back on them. And when you turn your back, you turn towards the sea, and down on the sandy shore, you see a boat. Jesus is climbing out of that boat. He has arrived. He has come for you like he came down from heaven to take your sin upon the cross, to pay it in full. He's come down for you. He's arrived at your shore. Walk away from the tombs. No, don't walk, run. You see Jesus. Ignore all the pull to stay there, all the temptation to stay there, all the false pleasures to stay there. Cut them off, let them go. You're free. You at least have enough strength to run. Run all the way down to the sandy shore and fall into the sand, on your knees, on your hands. Let your head hit the sand. You're at the feet of Jesus. You have no strength to even speak, but he knows what you're struggling with. He knows. And he forgives. And he's ready to restore you. And so now, at the feet of Jesus, let's just worship him.